Hello, just quickly before I introduce my guest, I just wanted to pop on to tell you some exciting news. So firstly, my name's Tracey McBeath. I am the host of the Low Carb Lifestyle podcast, and I'm also the founder of the Low Carb Lifestyle Hub, which is where this podcast is linked to. And it is an excellent resource linking you with information and practitioners to help you on your low carb journey, whether you are a practitioner, whether you are an everyday person who is interested in nailing their low carb lifestyle. The hub is there for you. We have our first summit coming up tomorrow week, Saturday the 2nd of April, Low Carb for Beginners. Whether you're a beginner or not, I guarantee you there'll be something for you. So please register. It is free to watch for 24 hours or purchase for just $19 Australian to watch in your own time. That money will go into me being able to keep the hub going and grow it as a resource for people to really nail their low carb lifestyle and reverse their health conditions. So the information below it, please check it out. Now, if you have been in the low carb space, you will understand that testing insulin is such an important factor. If you don't understand that, this podcast is going to really help you understand why testing our insulin is really going to tell us sometimes even 10 years before we get diagnosed with pre-diabetes or diabetes that things are going astray, if you like, and that we need to address some things in our lifestyle. Now, the thing is, a lot of doctors don't even understand that, but also testing insulin can be very tricky. At the moment, it's just a blood test to test your fasting insulin. But my guests today have developed something that I think is going to change the face of healthcare. And it is so, so exciting in that it is called craft insulin testing. And it's really like testing your blood glucose pre, post, and after a meal. It is as easy as testing your blood sugar. And I really believe it is something that should be a part of every medical clinic or nutrition clinic, any health clinic. Even coaches could have something like this where they could bring people in and test their insulin. And what a gift it would be to know 10 years prior to having glucose that goes astray, that things are starting to go astray for you. So this podcast is really, really exciting. I hope you listen and learn from it. If you are someone, a clinic, a medical clinic, or a coaching practice or a dietetics practice that is interested in exploring this option, please read all the information below and link to Andy and Donal to find out how to bring this to your practice wherever you are. They're in the UK, but this is obviously something that needs to go global. And maybe you are the one that's going to start it up wherever you are. You can use a very special code as friends of the hub that will give you a 14% discount, and it will give me a little bit of money to put back into the hub as well. So if you do end up exploring it and you find out about this from this podcast and from the hub, please do use the discount code that is written below as well. So testing insulin is fundamental. As Ben Bickman says, insulin resistance is the number one chronic condition that's either directly or indirectly related to everything going wrong in the world today when it comes to our health. And we know that insulin goes awry first. So imagine being able to pick that up much earlier than we currently can. So very, very exciting. I hope you enjoy this podcast. And as I said, if you do reach out to Andy and Donal to get more information on this, please do mention the hub and my code to get yourself a discount and to also get the hub a little bit of money to keep going. So thank you so much. And I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please let me know if you would like any topics that you would like me to focus on, or maybe for the next summit, there is something that you particularly would like to learn more about. It's an endlessly fascinating area that we just really are going to keep learning more and more about as we go along. But I'm so grateful for you for being here. So thank you very much. Bye. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Low Carb Lifestyle Podcast. And it is such a global podcast. Today, I am sitting in my room in the morning talking to Andy and Donal, who is in Ireland, and England. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Well, it's so great to finally meet you both. I've been huge fans of your work and so enjoyed what you've been creating in the low carb space. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us all. But maybe, I don't know, who would like to start first to share a little bit about who you are and what brought you to the low carb space? Do you want to go first, Andy?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Like many in this space, it's a bit of a personal journey. I used to be a professional athlete, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. And there was a period of my life a few years ago where I wasn't in the best version of myself, and I started to kind of looking for answers as to why that was. And obviously being an athlete previously, and being in pretty good health as I thought, being not in that state of health was something that was very hard for me to kind of understand. And that's why I started to kind of investigate why I was not feeling very well, not feeling in great health, and putting on weight when I shouldn't have been. You know, I've got a very active job, and, you know, as a coach, as a strength conditioning coach. And that led me to kind of learn more. I have done a lot of courses through the Nutrition Network, and working with the Real Meal Revolution as a coach. And what I found out for myself, I wanted to help other people in what I learned. So that's really what opened my eyes, and then wanting for what I wanted for myself, I want for everybody else.
Do you remember the moment when that kind of all came? You know, we sort of, I think so many people have this moment where they're just like hit with it. It's like, how did I not see this? And why are we not told this? You know, like, do you remember what was like for you? Was it, you know, Prof Noakes, obviously somebody else who was super fit, running, type 2 diabetes, overweight, couldn't figure it out, and then reads something in the space of 2 hours. He's like, that's it. He's completely changed his shit, you know, his whole thinking around it.
Yeah, I think kind of understanding a lot of what he went through and learning about that, and then the information around food and the science around kind of low carb, and the impact that the food industry kind of has in that, it kind of makes you feel very angry when you start to learn about those types of things. And you start to realize why that information is not necessarily out there. And that's why these learning programs are so important, that this information is provided to the public so that they are able to make their, you know, an informed decision about the way that they live their life to be, you know, fit and healthy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just showing people choice and more information, and trying to, I guess, offer another perspective. And yeah, that's right. Try and drown out some of the noise, because geez, it's noisy in the nutrition space, isn't it?
Very, very noisy.
Donal, I'd love to hear your story and how you met Andy and what you do together.
Yeah, so my background is I was a GP in the NHS for 27 years, retired last year, and came full-time into the field of improving insulin resistance. And my journey probably started about 6-7 years ago, when I developed type 2 diabetes. I was probably at the height of my career. Developing this diagnosis was a sense of real failure to me, because I was involved in a lot of preventative schemes at the time, trying to prevent long-term conditions. And here was me, one of the leaders, getting a totally preventable condition. So I did what I told my patients to do, which was go see your GP, get some medications, and I was told to lose some weight. So I lost 5 kilograms, very hard, on a program called Weight Watchers that many might know. And in fact, I brought Weight Watchers into the surgery and I queued with my patients every Thursday night. And when I lost the 5 kilograms, I repeated my bloods, and my HbA1c went from 68 to 68.
Didn't change.
Absolutely no
Okay.
change. So, and then I noticed that my diabetic patients who were joining me, their sugars weren't really improving. They were losing a bit of weight, but their metabolic status was not getting any better. So this intrigued me. And then one day I met 2 Southeast Asian patients who, over 6 months, put their diabetes into remission from a HbA1c of 110 down to 38. And these guys weren't obese. They had BMIs of about 23. So nice and thin. Oops, sorry, I've got a dog here. And that made me think, you know, what on earth is going on here? So I looked up the science and papers and found out there was loads of evidence for this out there, and couldn't understand why we weren't doing it more. So I did it to myself, put my diabetes into remission. I then did it with probably 40 or 50 of my patients, and they all went into remission or significantly improved as well. But it was really hard to do this in a 10-minute consultation. So that's what pushed me to leave the traditional NHS practice. So I now have half-hour slots, maximum appointments, 4-hour slots. And during this time, I came across the idea that it was possible to measure insulin. Which of course was mind-blowing, because everyone says it's all about the insulin and hyperinsulinemia and high levels of insulin. So if you know how high they are, then surely that is a good measure of you know, how bad things are going and what you can do to improve it. And it was through this that I met Andy. So Andy also found out about this, and I linked in with Andy through a company called Metabolic, who gave us the equipment that could measure insulin levels. So a few months ago, myself and Andy got together in his studios, and we did 7 craft curves on 7 people in one morning, which was really exciting and interestingly flowed rather well, I think, Andy, even though we were a bit worried that it might have ended up as a mini car crash.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was great fun. Yeah,
but it obviously didn't. Yeah, didn't end up like a car crash.
About that?
Yeah, sure. So it was seven of our my clients. So it was our first kind of run through to see how a craft clinic would actually work. So it was the pioneering kind of chance for us to see how it would work in practice. So I think along with Donal's colleague Debbie, so there's the 3 of us that were able to work with the 7 clients on the day. So they came in the morning. We were able to do their fasting insulin, and then their measures at 40 minutes, an hour, and 2 hours and 3 hours after that. And so they would just cycle through from the time that they started and cycle through on their timings, and it worked and flowed very well. So we are now in a position where we can not only do one-to-one consultations, but also do a small craft clinic in different clinics around the country. And that's really what me and Donal are looking to set up with Metabolic now, is to look at sites around the UK and Ireland, but actually not just there, but beyond that, of offering this potential for clinics to have a craft clinic in their clinic with small groups, but also to be able to obviously do one-to-one assessments as well.
That's fantastic. There's a few things I'd love to sort of ask about. Firstly, Donal, like you were talking about, there's such a myth around, just lose the weight and you fix your metabolic health. But you've just clearly shown that, it's not necessarily the case. It's obviously a little bit more complex, and it's not just about simply telling people to lose weight, which we just still chronically do, particularly here. You go to the GP. Just go on Weight Watchers, eat less, move more, lower the fat, the same old message. But your story just highlights exactly it's not that simple.
No, and I can distinctly remember a moment in time when, I had my head in my hands thinking, what the hell have I been doing for the last, 23, 24 years? And that day was a real turning point where I decided I had to do something different, not just for myself, but for those who came to see me. And ever since then, work has been a joy. Whereas prior to that, it was a bit of a drudge getting up every day, seeing up to 40, 50 patients. And at the end of the day, thinking, have I really made a difference to anyone? Whereas, now I know at the end of every day, I genuinely have made a difference to most people that I see, and it just feels great.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because that's something, with a lot of my contacts, in the low carb space, GP, friends and colleagues, they say the same thing. It's fundamentally shifted everything about the joy they have with their work. They actually feel like they can. Exactly as you say, I think it's such a part of it that's underrated and not talked about enough. I mean, we all want to enjoy what we're doing, right? And going to work and being able to really help people. I mean, yeah, that's such a fantastic thing to see. And I think too, we all have those epiphanies. I was a personal trainer for 12 years. I mean, how much bad advice have I given over the years as well as a personal trainer, with that. And I think, actually what drives me is a lot of that. I acknowledge, I apologize. I didn't know. We do what we know, but when we know better, obviously we do better and we make up for it. And, people like you, and you, Andy, and Tim Noakes, they're the people that are really just leading the way in the space. And, that's great. So can I ask a little bit more about this craft, your craft clinics and the craft method and of testing insulin? So it sounds obviously at the moment in Australia and probably over there, if you fight with your GP, you can get a blood test to check your insulin level. But this obviously sounds a lot more like you're going to what the traditional checking of the blood glucose would be. So if you were going to get a full test, so it's obviously a lot more comprehensive. I'm just really interested in more around how it works and, what you're looking for, when you are testing people's insulin levels.
So practically what actually happens is we use devices like this, which everyone will recognize as a lateral flow device. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And you prick your finger with a finger pricker, and in the well in the lateral flow device here, you put 50 microliters of blood. It comes with a pipette. And then you add 4 drops of a buffer, and then you wait 15 minutes. And then like the lateral flows, you'll see 2 lines appearing. So one says the lateral flow device is working. And if the other line is really dense, you've got a high level of insulin. If there's nothing to see, it's probably going to be a 0 reading. But what you're really wanting to see is the response in your body to a 75-gram load of glucose.
Okay.
And if you're nicely insulin sensitive, you will physiologically get a rise because the insulin comes out to pack the sugar away. And usually it doesn't go that high. It might go up to maybe 30. I've had a number of very insulin sensitive people who it only went up to about 10, not much.
So it's probably because we're in the different scale here. So it's probably like if we get so 4.5, or under 5, I think it is, and over, I'm just, just to help, people who are in the Aussie sort of scale. I think if you go like over 10, they're worried, but most people would be well over 10. Yeah.
Well, I think you're talking about fasting levels.
Yeah.
Okay, but the next bit is what's your response after you've taken the sugar, and this is the challenge for the labs, and that's why point of care testing comes in really nicely, because it means in sitting you can do insulin levels at fasting at 40 minutes, 60 minutes, 90, 2 hours, and so on until your insulin levels come back down to normal, and then you can measure how high it goes, how long it stays high. And then that will give you a fair idea of why you're in the problem you are. So, if your insulin shoots high and stays high for 4 or 5 hours after 75 grams of glucose, you're in permanent fat storage mode. And of course, that's what we do when we have breakfast, when we have something at 11, something at lunchtime, something at 3 or 5, before bed. And then you wonder why we weren't losing weight, and in some ways, what I find lovely with this is you can look the patient client in the eye and say, it's not your fault. You've been doing everything you've been told to do, but that has been driving your insulin to super high levels. And that's why you're overweight. That's why you've got metabolic syndrome. That's why you've got polycystic ovaries. And, here's a really simple, easy way of undoing all that. Just take out the sugars, take out the processed foods, the rapidly absorbed carbohydrates, and suddenly the hunger disappears. I can still remember 5 years ago when, one day I realized I wasn't hungry. And, for the previous 20 years of my life, I was perpetually starving.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Do you think you could explain to my listeners, some of them might not quite understand the importance of checking insulin over, just the traditional blood glucose? What's the importance of doing that?
So before we become diabetic, so my blood sugars might be normal for many, many years, but my insulin levels will gradually rise because of insulin resistance. Now, I tend to think of insulin resistance a bit like noise and music in a nightclub. So when you go in initially to the nightclub, the noise is really loud and uncomfortable and possibly painful. But after half an hour, you don't really notice it anymore, and it's kind of okay. So you've become noise resistant. All right. And the same happens in your body with insulin. As it gradually rises, your body doesn't like having too much of it around. So it says, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And to overcome that, the pancreas pushes out even more insulin. And of course, what that does is it packs stuff away into fat. It makes you retain fluid, causes hypertension, drives inflammation. And all those things happen way before your sugars begin to go high. So possibly 4 or 5 years beforehand. So the beauty of this is it can pick up people who are even pre-diabetic. Okay, so pre-diabetes being my sugars are abnormal, but actually I've been pre-diabetic for probably 5, 6 years before that. So you pick somebody up with high insulin levels, they're going to get diabetes in the next 4 or 5 years. And you can do something significant to prevent that. So the beauty of this approach is it's both preventative and therapeutic, depending on which population you're targeting.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And I think I remember when I sort of first understood that, and it seems common sense, but yet people, doctors won't check insulin, and, it's so hard to get it done. And this sounds phenomenal. So Andy, I'd love to know, from you, how is it being received? What is your big goals and plans for it? And, what do you kind of see as the hurdles that you're going to have to overcome to kind of get this out? I mean, this should be, imagine it, in every clinic, in the world. I mean, how phenomenal would that be?
Amazing. And also the other potential that we have with metabolic is also a home testing kit, which is just a black box device that you can use with your phone. So
Great.
it links with an app, and you can actually do that at home as well. So
wow.
yeah, so it really opens up, you know, it makes it as accessible as possible for people to be able to do it. Now we understand the importance of being able to track this type of measure. I think that's the massive transformational purpose, is to give as many people access to this type of assessment as possible, because the more now we understand the importance of insulin and the impact that has on your health. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, in terms of what the clients get, being able to actually see something in front of them, for them to understand exactly what's going on, is so powerful that it can make that transition straight away. And I actually tested my father about 3 weeks ago, and the change that I've seen in him over those 3 weeks. I mean, he sends me like the meals that they have each night, that they're eating, that the transition that they're making, because they now understand. Well, my father understands the real importance of, you know, making changes to what he eats, and being able to reduce the impact of insulin on his body, because he struggled for the last few years. And before I tested him, he just said to me, he said, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what it is that I need to do. No one's telling me." And I said, "Well, we need to do this test on you, and then we'll know, and we'll have something then for you to actually see what's going on. And then we know what to do about it." And then that's where kind of the coaching aspect comes in, and understanding around food and eating and low carb comes in, because we know that that's the next stage of actually being able to reverse those conditions and bringing insulin levels back to normal.
It's fantastic. So do you see like a drug company is probably going to want to get their hands on this? Have you been talking to them?
No, I mean, really, we're in contact with groups that you know, in primary care networks and the nutrition network as well, of being able to introduce this into their program, so that they are able to use it as this being the first point of call. The point of care testing is to understand what's going on with the client, and then the next stage is then what do we then do about it? Yeah, and then we can then track it along the way to actually see what impact that intervention is having. And
yeah, so it's a part of a real customized approach, you know, obviously. Absolutely. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I've got quite a few GPs I know that listen to this podcast. I mean, if there's anyone, are you just kind of in the UK at the moment? If there's anyone in Australia that would be interested in sort of trialing it here, are you open to them contacting you? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And at the moment, you think it's really going to sit with GPs for now? I mean, or could, you know, like myself as a coach, you know, look into something like, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, I mean, that essentially is me. And then Donal from, you know, a GP practice, or, you know, retired now, but still in the same realm, is that it can be set up. It's a point of care testing. Anybody can set that up in their clinic anywhere, and that's the point as well, is to make that as accessible for anyone to have somewhere close to them to be able to go and access that clinic and have that test done.
So you need to think of it as a modern glucometer. You know, so you don't need a medical degree to use a glucometer.
No.
And the same applies to this apparatus, and like a lipidometer as well. So anything that is finger prick, you don't, there isn't the regulatory wrapping around it that there would be if you're taking blood off a patient and sending it to a laboratory. Yeah. So the beauty of this is it really democratizes health. And I just wanted to get back to one point you asked earlier about, did we talk to pharma companies? Well, the challenge here is that this is the opposite to drugs. Because the solution to fixing this is eating real food. And then the need for drugs disappears. And it's as Lustig would say, don't treat the symptoms of disease, treat the root cause of disease. And that's so with metabolic health and type 2 diabetes, it's foodable, it's not druggable.
Yeah, exactly. So, they won't be interested, basically. No.
I think for research, they may be interested because, the Flozins, the new drugs that make you urinate glucose, probably will help you drop your insulin level because you're getting rid of sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that point that you just made is something that I, make a point to hammer home as often as possible, that, lifestyle conditions like this, they aren't treatable by drugs. There isn't a pill you can take that's going to fix it. It's all it's doing is managing your symptoms. And, it's so important that we do understand it's caused by lifestyle, and for no fault of anybody, as you say, people are just doing the best they can with what they know. And, sometimes we hear new information, it freaks us out. We don't want to look at first, but, just planting the seed, there'll be a time when we're ready. And hopefully, I just think it's amazing, Andy, that you get to work with your dad, or you've seen, changes. Isn't that the best, because sometimes family don't, have this discussion all the time. I've got family
sometimes
don't
the
want to
hardest
talk to
ones
me.
to work with. Absolutely. Well, and I was only thinking about this the other day. I think the first kind of time where health and long-term health kind of really hit me was when early in my 20s, and my grandmother was quite a kind of dynamic figure in our family, and she would always support. She'd always come and watch me play football, travel all over the country, and then seeing her at that end stage, being confined to her home, and being really frail, mental acuity had gone. You'd have the same conversation 15, 20 times over, and sitting there and thinking, no, is this kind of how it is at the end, towards the end of your days? And that, I think, kind of started something in me then to kind of question, I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for anybody else. And in the search over the last kind of 5 years and to the point that we've got to now, and the benefit of this is starting to get to that point of, it doesn't have to be like that. And actually we can be a lot better at the end of our days and in a lot better health. And actually our health span can be a hell of a lot longer. And we can enjoy that period of a life a lot more with the right information, guys.
Yeah. And there's such a thing with, just because it's common doesn't make it normal. I think that's kind of a big mindset shift where we've got to keep. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm 50 now. Even the other day I heard I'm 50 now. I'm like, well, I'm actually 50 next year too. Like it's not it's a number. There is. It's not, I think it's easy to just kind of go, okay, well, this is how it is, but nobody wants it. Seriously, who wants to feel awful and not be able to look after yourself and watch it, have this slow decline? It was one thing I remember Ben Bickman, when I talked to him last year, say, it's this, we can keep you alive for a very long time, but this decline, You know, it's just very slow, and yeah, I don't think anyone wants it when they're truly honest, you know, with themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the life in those years, isn't it, that you want? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, it's been so great to chat to you both. I realize it's way past your bedtime, so you probably need to go to bed. But I would love you to hear from both of you. I love sort of just, you know, wrapping it up with just some words of insight or wisdom or advice, you know, that you would love to give to anyone listening, who might be, I suppose, really my whole sole purpose is to get people in. You know, I want people to try, just give it a go. You know, it's not as scary as you think or as hard as you think. It might be challenging, but you know, from your perspective, you've both had obviously a unique path to this space. You know, what are some words of wisdom that you could give to anyone listening?
I think I would kind of finish with is stay curious or be curious, and just keep asking good questions.
Love it.
And I think for me, it's about getting hope back into your life. So so I think by eating in a different way, one is I felt amazing. I'm not hungry. I've got energy back. I'm sleeping great. So you know, when you're feeling really lousy, you know, what we need to do is put hope back into people's lives, because you can get to a better place.
Yeah. And isn't that amazing? Hope. I mean, hope is, yeah, I love that. I love that so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you both. And as we said, Andy, before we started recording, meet you as best as possible. And maybe one day we'll get to a nutrition network or a low carb USA function or something, or a UK great. One, and meet face to face. It'll be brilliant. But thank you for the work you're doing. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm so excited to be able to hear and to spread the word. And anyone listening that is interested in exploring, please, I have obviously all the details that they can contact you. And I'm certainly going to stay in touch, because I think, I mean, I've got so many clients that would benefit from it too. I'd love it. So yeah, thank you so much, and good luck with everything, and yeah, keep going.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracey, and thanks for all the work that you do in pulling all this information together.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.